Hi, I'm David Hovel, and I'm associated with TLC because I do a lot of their technology, and my wife Bonnie is one of their principal people. And I've had some trouble in the last few months that I expected to a degree and didn't expect. And some of that was due to people that I knew who died, and people that I did not know who died, whose wives, spouses had to come to me for help. And what transpired really was that sometimes very, very simple problems kept people from gaining access to the information that they needed from their spouse. In one case, a woman's husband died in the hospital of COVID, and he had left a bunch of vital information on his computer, and the result was she couldn't get into his computer. It had a normal password. She thought she knew the password. She didn't. She brought me his computer and a little booklet. And because I know how people code these things and what they call things, I was able to find it and get into his computer for her. And that was fine. In another case, a man I worked with in another volunteer organization in the villages died. Now, he knew he was going to die. He had a terminal illness. Everyone knew he was going to die. And he left a bunch of data for his wife. The problem was he left a lot of data. He left 15 or 20 pages printed out from what looked like Excel spreadsheets that had all kinds of information. And she needed some very simple things, and I had to go in and find them. And she didn't really know how to do some of the things. Well, she had access to technical resources like me. And then I've heard other stories anecdotally from people. And what I've begun to realize is exactly what they were saying earlier, which is people don't want to talk about this stuff. And my attitude is get over it. I'm going to use very blunt terms. I'm going to talk about incapacity. I'm going to talk about death. And I call this whole subject preparing for the inevitable because it is. And for shorthand, because I got very tired of typing the words preparing for the inevitable, I came up with the acronym P4I. And I call it gathering and preparing the essential information. And here we go. The big picture is you do need to put your house in order. And they've talked about this earlier in the talk. You and your spouse both need to prepare. This is not a time to honor old standing gender roles or spousal roles about who handles that sort of stuff. You both need to sit down and work with it. And either you do it or someone else will do it at one of the worst times in their lives, when you've just died, and when it could be your children who are looking at that, or it could be your executor, or it could be strangers. And this is the other one that you really have to watch out for. And that's something that everyone should recognize is we had a case where both of the people in the house next door to us died. One of them was in the hospital, and his spouse that no one expected would die was found dead in the corridor. And the result was they had to call her children. Luckily, they had a very good friend in the neighborhood who had some contact information. And the man had been a lawyer, and he was ready. But it happens all the time that this sort of thing happens, and nobody even knows whom to contact. And that's frightening, both for the people who are passing away and for those who come along behind them. And I'm a practical person. I'm a programmer. I'm a person who believes in doing things. And I'm going to talk very, very brass tacks about what to do and how to do it. The goal of my P4I project is that when you die, or you are incapacitated, or you have a stroke, or you have a debilitating heart attack, someone will come into your home and they will find somewhere on your desk or in your desk a slim paper folder, or a paper folder with a memory stick in it that has basically everything anybody needs to know. Now, it's not every document, and it's not all decisions, but it is the guideline. It's the map to where all the other pieces are held. And that's what's important to know, is it's not perfect, it's not complete, it will vary by locality, and it'll certainly vary by couple, but it is the beginning that allows them to trace the little threads that will lead them everywhere else. Don't assume people are going to know how to get at your information. People just don't. Everyone organizes things. I'm a computer guy. I cannot believe some of the ways people organize their information or fail to do so. But it's unique. It's idiosyncratic. The way you think makes sense to you might make no sense whatsoever to even someone who knows you well. Don't leave heaps of paper. We all know that one of the problems with getting older, or even being younger, is ginormous boxes full of stuff that nobody even has seen in this century. They've got dust all over them, a half an inch thick. Don't do that. We're going to talk about this later. I want you to build sets of what I call inventories, and I'll talk about what those are. But to me, I call them inventories rather than lists, because a list sounds like something that you sit down and you do. You think, I need some groceries. I need milk. I need bread. I need eggs. And that's not what I'm talking about. Start with that, but then move on and look around. If you're thinking of making an inventory of all of your assets for your lawyer, look at your check register, look in your online billing, look in your debit accounts and your credit accounts and your credit cards, and find out what do you really pay for? Are you leasing property that you've forgotten about? Are you leasing a motor home? Did you put out money, a deposit on a timeshare in Hawaii for this winter that's going to come due for you in 5 months with another $15,000 to pay? You need to look through everything. So to do this, what we've done is develop workbooks. And these are simple documents, and you have the choice of either downloading them and using an application or program on a computer to fill them in, or simply printing them out and filling them in by hand. Either way, you'll need to review them once in a while, but at least you'll have something. And then you put these documents into a manila folder, and you tell the vital people in your lives where they are. This folder I call the essential information folder. I wish I had a better snazzier term like the hot folder or the magic folder, but I think essential information covers it. And there's two parts to this talk. I'm going to talk about what goes in the folder, which are these inventories. And of course, it covers the obvious things like wills and trusts, financial issues, online accounts, and your personal life inventory. The treasured things you inherited from your grandparents, and what to do about your pets, and what to do about vital pieces of furniture that you got from your mother-in-law 70 years ago, things like that. And what you can do starting today to make your life simpler for you and for everyone else. So what's in the essential information folder? Again, it can be a folder, it can be a memory stick, it can be a folder with papers and a memory stick. I'm not being pedantic about what's in it, but it has copies of documents that are vital. And that's wills, trusts, and as you heard about this, end-of-life documents, medical powers, financial powers. And then you have the inventories, as I call them, the major assets inventory. That's pretty self-evident. It's the big stuff. It's your houses, it's your cars, it's your investments, or the money that you've loaned to people. And then your financial inventory. Where is your money? Is it in stocks and bonds? Is it in CDs? Is it pension plans? Is it Social Security? Are there spousal and survivor benefits associated with those things? And then there's the obligation and house management inventory. One of the most tedious things that I've seen when people take over from their dead parents here in the villages is there's just all these people. There's the pest control people, and then there's the plant people, and the bush people, and the people who wash the windows, and the people who clean the house. And a lot of these things just simply go on, and people just show up at the house and ring the doorbell. There's no one there. How do you contact all those people? Make sure that there's no outstanding obligation so that no one can put a lien against the estate. You pay off the final bills and tell them your services are not needed, or maybe you want to continue the services. Then there's the online accounts inventory. This is enormous. This is a vital part that many people forget. They proliferate accounts with their banks, with Amazon, with Netflix, with Charles Schwab, or with Vanguard, and they don't really recognize that they understand maybe what those things are. But I have seen people die where it took their heirs months to sort out all their accounts. And you know what's really sad is sometimes they weren't really sure they had it all. They really couldn't be sure, because how do you know your father didn't have money somewhere else? And then physical access inventory. This is stuff that needs a lock or a key or a combination lock or permission from someone else to get into. And finally, your personal inventory. Those things that are precious to you may not mean much to other people, but they're vital to you, and you want to make sure that things are done about that. So now we're going to move into this here. Some documents are important to include in their physical, signed, or certified form. And these are things like marriage certificates, death certificates, military discharge papers. The best example I can give you is doctors are stuck in a bind. When a doctor is involved and you tell the doctor, this person didn't want any extraordinary care. She doesn't want to be on a ventilator. She doesn't want a feeding tube. And the doctor says, show me. And you have to show them not just a signed piece of intent. You could be anybody. He'll never know who that signature is. It has to be a signed physical copy of the healthcare proxy or other form. So he's not being rude. He's protecting himself from litigation. And it's also in many cases a legal requirement. He would be derelict if he didn't challenge you for an actual physical document. So some of these things, you simply must have them in there. So what are the workbooks? The workbooks are simple, printable computer documents. They're intended to be the very first documents that people discover. Therefore, there has to be a certain thought about where they are. You put them in a special place, you mark them in big letters, end-of-life workbooks, end-of-life notes, whatever you want to call them. Don't call them P4I workbooks. They might not know what that is. But put them together in the same place, seal it up, check it every 6 months, and tell your daughter, your eldest daughter, your spouse's oldest child, your best friend, your preacher, whatever it is, whoever's closest to you, where that is. Not just that you have it, where is it? And it is the roadmap. It contains the locations of other essential documents and information, and it has the primary contacts for everyone who really needs to know that you have died or been incapacitated in a severe way. So I'm going to show you right now what these things look like. They're in two forms. One is in Microsoft Excel format, and the other is in Microsoft Word format. Now, don't be intimidated if you don't happen to have Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word, because there's also a simple printable form that is a printout or a digital printout, a copy of the Word version, which you can just send to your printer and fill it in by hand. Now, the reason I put them up here in digital form, Excel and Word, is because if you know those programs, you can download them and you can make the spaces bigger, and you can make more columns, and you can add in more pages, and you can put in secondary notes. You can do whatever you want to. There's no copyright. There's no claims on these. These are free. You can't change them, but you may use them as you wish. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing this screen for just a minute, and I'm going to go over to Chrome, and I'm going to show you my the TLC website. This is the TLC website that I built and that we maintain. And for those of you who don't know, this is a brief moment to tell you that when you go there, it might not look exactly like this, because if I shrink this window, you notice how it actually changed the way it was it displayed. When it's wide, you get nice big letters and it has all the page names. Most of the time, when most of you go there, it's going to look like this. And up in the upper left-hand corner where the hand is right now, it's going to have what we call a hamburger menu. This is a bunch of lines going across. That's supposed to represent a menu. You click on that, and the final choice in the list of pages is events and information. Here's the events and information page. So we went to the TLC website, we went to the events and information page, and now I'm going to use my mouse wheel and scroll down past these things about training groups and presentations and YouTube and Zoom. And down here near the bottom, there's a thing called Tools and Handouts. And the first item under Tools and Handouts is P4I. It says, click here for our guides to preparing for the inevitable. I'm going to do just that. Now you're looking at a document I wrote. This is not a workbook. What this is a guide to all the different workbooks. And I have a rationale document that explains the various reasons I chose to do things the way I did, my rationale for this project. And then you have the various workbooks, the Excel workbook, the Microsoft Word workbook, and the printable workbook. And if you click on the Microsoft Word or the Excel workbook, you'll be prompted to download it and put it on your computer. So I'm going to click on the printable workbook, and here is in Chrome. Now they're all different. Firefox Edge looks a lot like this. Firefox doesn't look quite like this. But this is the printable version, and it gives a little overview of why to do this stuff, and it goes right into these basically white pages that you fill in. Here is the statement of the title page. Whose preparations are these? Who are the people who are doing this work? Basic information, contact information, religious contact. We'll go through these in detail. Wills and trusts. But the point is that all you have to do is go to the website, click on the P4I, and then decide which format of the workbook that you want and go there. Now, down below the primary documents and workbooks chapter is the useful links chapter. Bonnie and Lou were referring to links that are useful for making end-of-life decisions and doing end-of-life research. And this is where all their research, their tedious, time-consuming research wound up. So please pay attention to what's after my little section, because these are very valuable, and it took, I happen to know for a fact, days and days to collate and collect that information. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that and go back to my presentation now. So again, here's what they look like. The one on the left is an Excel version of the workbook, which I like because it's easy to use for me. I know Excel quite well. and I can make them as fat or as skinny or put as many in as I want. And I can search for stuff, and I can move things around, and I can print them how I like them. The one on the right is Microsoft Word. It's the same basic content, just organized the way Microsoft Word would organize it. Now we're going to get to going through these workbooks. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is wills and trusts. Big message. Hello, everyone out there in the world. Do not die intestate. Do not die without a will. Do not assume that an old will from another state is going to have any sway over property you own in Florida. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Very often, as my old father told me, my father was a political science professor, and the first time I got married, my father said to me, make a will, because if you die, the state can come in and take your money. And that varies from state to state, and it's still true. And even if you don't have a state that's confiscatory, probate could take you years and take a large portion of your money. Sometimes you can bypass probate, sometimes you can't. So the thing is, make a will in the state where you live, because if your body is found in a state and you have property in that state's going to claim primacy. If your will is from New Hampshire or Illinois, that's just going to create a nightmare for your heirs. Write whatever wills and trusts you need and go to a lawyer. I really think that, using things like robo-lawyer and all that kind of stuff, it's okay, but I wouldn't do it. Not if you have assets beyond, say, just your house and your car. If you have any other significant assets, pay the freight. Go to a lawyer, get it done. Keep it simple. Don't be held up by worrying about, well, what if Betty wants the crockery and Jenny wants the dog? No, that doesn't matter. Think big stuff. I say anything less than $5,000, don't worry about it. Okay? Just put the big stuff down, and better a first draft than no draft. Always review this. And then give everyone who might be involved, even tangentially, contact information for your lawyer. And we're going to talk about this again. To consider providing copies of your legal documents to all your heirs. That's what we've done. I don't think it's problematical, because here's the deal. They might not like the way you've allocated your assets, but you're just leaving a tremendous problem for everyone else if you don't clarify to people what's going on in your estate before you pass. Now we're coming to the financial inventory and major assets inventory. Again, big bullet item. Number 2, after making a will, is declare beneficiaries on every bank account, on every asset account, on every policy that you have. You go in and you declare your beneficiaries, and then you turn around and you request a copy from them that contains your beneficiaries, so that there's no possibility that these things slip through the cracks. And you can apportion funds. And we know this for a fact because we've done it. You can take an investment account and you can say 30% goes here and 20% goes there and 50% goes over there. You provide that information to the investment company, and when they are presented with a certificate of death, that money will be automatically distributed and taxes and withholdings will be handled. Review your beneficiaries. And in these inventories, we're going to have columns where you put in the beneficiaries. And in the financial accounts inventory, you include them whenever that's applicable. So what are you inventorying? And here, I'm not going to try to cover all the bases and talk about everybody and what everybody has. I'm just trying to do a checklist to jar people's memories. Mortgages, checking savings accounts, investment accounts, pensions and annuities, life insurance policies. I've got one small annuity from the 80s when a company got bought. Only pays me a few $100s a month, but it's something. And I don't want that to get lost. Maybe there's survivor benefits or not. I don't know anymore. Spousal survivor benefits, that's possible. But it's something that you shouldn't just leave on the floor. Billions and billions of dollars are left on the floor by people who really don't inventory this stuff. And when they die, the money just sits there in abeyance. They're not going to struggle to find you because they continue to make money off of their management of your money. You include the name of the institution, the account number and all your online login information, contact information for a person if you actually know a person at that organization, who the beneficiaries are, and estimated value. These are columns in the inventory that you will download from our website. Okay, your major assets inventory. Using our prepared inventories is the easiest way, but you can use any other form you want to that makes a complete list. Set a threshold for items that are too small, and just don't worry about things worth, I believe, less than about $5,000. And here you include things like homes and timeshares, cars, boats, motorcycles, expensive jewelry, artwork, and rare collectibles. I don't mean the normal Hummel figurines. I mean stuff that people might even want to steal because they can get on eBay and sell it for $30,000. Record locations and methods of access. Where is it being kept? How is it locked? Designate recipients. Here I'm not calling them beneficiaries, I'm calling them recipients because that's a different kind of thing. And also we have a great thing these days called a smartphone. And this means anytime there's confusion about which item you're talking about, you can photograph those items and make sure that you can print out the photograph or tag it with a name and indicate what it is that you're talking about. Now, here comes another inventory, which is your obligations and household management. Think of this as the day-to-day money situation. What taxes you owe, escrow and insurance information on your homes, monthly automatic payments that are debited, car payments, car lease payments, insurance payments, other debts you pay personally or by mail, like your credit card bills, things like that. And one thing people often forget is amount others may owe you. Very often, if you've helped a friend or if you've given money to somebody in your family, other people may not know that. And that debt is actually part of your estate and by rights should really be dealt with. That person, if he's another beneficiary, should be debited for that amount so that amount is shared out by other people. Again, I know of many people who sell property. A good friend of mine, he owned an office building. He sold it to somebody and he's financing the mortgage. Now, you got to make sure when he goes that the people he sold it to are going to continue to pay his estate for that property. And house management. Here we come down to get a bit of the minutia. Power and gas companies, phone, TV, internet service providers, home health care providers. A lot of people have somebody coming in once in a while. Gardeners and pest control, house cleaning services. For each of these include business contact information, account numbers, and typical payments. And again, this is all in the inventories. These are all common data in the inventory. Now, here's where we get into the 21st century. Computers, devices, and online inventory accounts. And I say even those you may have forgotten because we do. Okay, many people have defunct old, they call them tombstones. Out there somewhere, you were an old user of Yahoo. I mean, in 1999, you thought you were super cool because you had a Yahoo email account. That thing should be closed. It should be stopped. And also old credit cards or things that you tried for a while. You bought a few clothes from some strange clothing company. You gave them your credit card number. That should be nuked. That should be eliminated. And we're going to talk about this in some detail here. You have to record important information for every account on any digital device or any online service you use. It's vital that you do this for online shopping website and email accounts. Your email accounts don't automatically die when you do. They don't know who you are. They couldn't care less. You need to go in and close them. Now, Google and other providers sometimes have features. Google has a feature that if you don't use, you can activate it. It's not by default, but you can activate it such that if you don't use your account for 6 months, they will close it automatically. And this is their easy way of saying, typically, if somebody hasn't used that account in 6 months, they're probably dead. And that's what they do. Facebook has similar features. You can look into this. There's no general name for it, but they are easy to use and they're free. When you record this information, be sure you record your PINs, your passwords, the account names for online banking, and your investment accounts. All the information. Then, because all this information is actually on your tablets and computers, be sure to let your heirs and executors have the PINs and passwords for your phones, your computers, and your tablets. And then you need the email account information. Sometimes people will set up an email account, they'll stick the password into their iPad, and they have no clue what it used to be. But if that happens, if a person can get into the iPad, they can send a message to reset the password, get the reset password, log in, and close the account. People who know about these things, and younger people usually do, can handle that as long as they have an access path to that email address. You also these days have to think about cloud accounts like Dropbox, Google, OneDrive, iCloud, etc., etc. We have several. And then you have your internet and TV streaming, Netflix, Amazon, Comcast. I have all of those. And then there are smart devices, routers, video streaming devices like Roku, home security systems like Nest and Arlo and all that stuff. Very important to go through this. It may be tedious, but somebody's going to have to do it, and you're the best one. And even if you don't have it, you could actually ask for help. You could ask one of your children or a friend to come over and help you through this process to put it all together to make it easy for everyone else. Physical access inventory. I say locks and keys and all that. And my motto here is don't leave your heirs staring at your key ring. Don't leave them sitting there wondering what in the world is that red key with the magic fob on the end, right? Nobody wants to know what that is. You need to make a list of things that require a physical key or a key code or a combination lock or something to get into. Cars, boats, and motorcycles are often obvious things, but sometimes even a motorcycle is locked up in a storage unit, and you have to have access to that and the key to the motorcycle. I said boats twice. That's my fault. Storage facilities. We have one. Sports clubs. There's often lockers in sports clubs. Safes and lock boxes in your house. Safe deposit boxes in your bank. Your bank will need a certificate of death, but if people don't have the keys, first, you have to write it down or people might not even know that safe deposit box exists. Secondly, you might have to get a duplicate key made, in which case they charge you for a locksmith to come out and drill out the lock and replace the lock. I believe you should label keys for clarity. And one of the things that's good is photographing them. You can lay them out on a table with a piece of paper with the words underneath it written on a tablet. Take a shot of that picture or make a short video on your iPhone saying this key is the key to the storage unit. This key is the key to the lockup in the back of the house. And both of these ways are great ways to be really clear about what keys go where. Now, final bit of this, or more or less the final one, is the personal inventory. And I know that this is a bit of a smaller fish to fry, but for many people it's extremely important. And I think many people would like to go to their, grave or their beyond, believing that the things that they wished about their possessions and their pets and other things happened the way they had thought they would, that they don't have to worry about that when their life is fading in front of them. Part of this now is computers. You got to back up your computers, and backing it up means putting it on a separate physical hard drive or some other kind of medium and storing that away. Get your smartphone picture collections in order. There's companies that will do this. There's a lot of people, Apple being the prime one, but there's many others that will help you organize and sort your picture collections and let you add and scan in other pictures. Be sure you're clear about who's supposed to get what. You don't want your children and your friends standing in your kitchen wondering who's going to get your soup tureen that you found in France that was made in 1885, right? You don't want that. You want to have that stuff clearly labeled about who gets what. And then record the location of items, because sometimes you put things away. And if an item is not obvious, take a photo. So I'm talking about the smaller things in your life, your computers, your smartphones, cameras, musical instruments, of which I have a few, artwork, and so on, valuable furniture, jewelry items. And remember, the way you do this is you start with the stuff that's really important to you. Walk through your house and write down the biggies. If you have time later and you have the instinct to do so, then go in and deal with the details. But get something done. Get these things done the way you would like to see them disposed of in your absence. Part 3, contacts. This is really important. One of the things that happens now with smartphones is there's a thing called ICE, which is in case of emergency. And this is done on iPhones and Android phones, and it's a way that if somebody finds your corpse, and I'm going to be very blunt here, they're riding along in a golf course, and there along the side of the path is a body. And on this body is a phone, but the phone is locked, right? And it might not be a thumb. Sometimes that's easy. But they don't know the password, but they want to know whom to contact. ICE will let them use your phone, look up the contacts that you have marked as in case of emergency, and use your phone to call 911. Very, very good thing. Very good thing to look into, but too detailed for me to go into the fine points of. Keep your smartphone contacts up to date, because it's the first place anybody's going to look. Who are you going to, if you naively just find someone dead, find their phone open, who are you going to call? You're going to go into their phone list and you're going to call some of the people that they've recently called. The most recent callers, the most frequent callers, you're going to call them. What I do is I use the notes field in my contact to indicate whether people are doctors, dentists, charity work, whether they're family members, or whether they're part of religious organizations. And remember, someone you don't even know may well need to contact your family. That's just the bottom line. It happens all the time. Finally, I don't have any pets right now in this stage in my life, but I know that some people have very, very dear pets. Have a plan for each pet and have the pets inventoried. We have an inventory for that. Name, breed, age of pets, pictures to avoid confusion. You know what they look like? Maybe no one else will. Medications. A lot of pets in the villages are old and feeble. You see people pushing sick dogs around in baby carts because the dog can only walk 3 steps at a time. Food preferences. All the things you'd want somebody to know. And often people know somebody who might want that pet. And that would be wonderful if your child or your heir or your executor can just go to somebody 3 doors down and say, oh, that cat you looked at for so many years, you want that cat? Maybe that's easy. Okay. Now, one of the most significant developments in the last few years has been the rise of what are called password managers. Now, they've been around a long time. And I wrote one 20 years ago for my wife and myself. But what that is a single program, an application, if you will, if you're not talking smartphone language. People call them apps, same thing. Program, application, same thing. And it stores all your passwords and your logins for all the various websites and other applications on your phone in a single place. And you can also store things like medical information, lock combinations, vaccination status, all that. And the beauty of it is, if you get one of these things, and they usually are services, you have to pay for them, the data is highly encrypted. It can't be broken into very easily. I've never heard of a password management company being hacked, for whatever that's worth. And they synchronize between devices. So if my wife finds out about a new website while she's on her tablet, she can go and log in and make up a password, and then the password manager will store that information and it will automatically get migrated over to her computer. And that's wonderful. And the beauty of all this is if you tell somebody the name of the program, that is to say, I think there's one called LifeLock, and there's a bunch of others out there, and your account name and password, that's all they need to know. They can get a device, install that software, go into your account, and they have access to your digital online life. They have everything that you know, and maybe even more. Be sure to include this information if you use a password manager in your worksheet. So, what can you do now? Because obviously one thing you can do is fill out the inventories, put the information together, but there's a few other things. I have noticed, and a lot of people notice this, but I'll take ownership of this, that many couples, especially in the villages, have highly gender divided roles. One is the cook, one is the person who deals with the automobile, one is the person who deals with the computers, another is the person who deals with the yard. I believe you should switch roles so that if one spouse passes or becomes incapacitated or becomes simply incontinent or unable to move, that the other person will know how to cook, at least to a degree, will know how to fill out prescription drugs, what doctors to call, what pharmacies are used, what online drug services are being used. There's a lot of things like this. So if your regular routines are fairly segregated, just pick, I would say, one day a month where the other spouse, the spouses just swap hats and everyone does what the other one does, so that you can actually learn this stuff. And then what you learn, write down somewhere. And that, because part of the message that I'm saying here is a lot of time, both spouses aren't going to die within a short time frame. One will be left. And so 90% of the time, my goal is to help that one who is left behind to go on with her life or his life in the best way possible. And this is one of those ways. Organize your lives. Yeah, everybody likes to be preached at, but pardon me, I'm going to put on my preacher's hat and I'm going to preach for a minute. I'm going to get up on my soapbox and stand up straight and tell you that you have too much stuff around your house. I was going to use a 4-letter word for that, but I'm not. You need to get out there and throw away the junk you don't need, use, wear, or want. Just clean it out. And don't come up and say, oh, okay, Saturday morning, January 1st, 2022, I'm going to clean my closet. Well, no, what you do is you make a list of the places to clean and you just go after them for a couple of hours at a time and just clean them out until you think you've gotten it to a decent point and move on to the next one. If you set the bar too high, you're just going to stumble over the bar. Get rid of kitchen utensils and appliances that you don't use. Many of these are way too old. And above all, get rid of dangerous items. Throw rugs. I can't believe how many older people have throw rugs. No throw rugs, okay? And precarious furniture items. There's many of the time that I've walked through a house of an older person and found that the air from my walking past a cabinet caused figures to fall over, okay? Or my tread on the floor caused things to fall. That kind of precarious, overly crowded stuff is just a recipe for disaster. And my main recommendation is get a good cross-cut paper shredder. You can go to Staples or one of these places and buy one. And just shred everything. Just have a shredding party. Just take stuff out of your desk and shred it. Look at those dates. If they're older than 6 years old, throw it out. If it's not relevant anymore, throw it out too. But even there, the IRS doesn't care about anything that's very old. So get rid of that stuff, because otherwise your poor children or spouse or somebody is going to be there upset and sad by your absence and having to deal with all this stuff. And so I say, not just switch roles with your spouse or your partner, but when your heirs or executors visit, like my son lives in Orlando and he comes to visit me and I go to visit him and we talk about what would happen if one of us got hit by a car, okay? And think about things like bill paying, drug handling, pet care. I'm not talking about micromanaging, cooking and all that stuff, but you can say, hey, I want to show you how I deal with my pet's problem. My pet has arthritis and here's what I do, okay? So, because that person might not take care of your pet for long, but probably will have to take care of that pet for a week or two. Now, what do Bonnie and I do? Okay, I've been preaching here, and I'm sorry, I'm going to stop preaching and admit that I'm just a guy who happens to be a geek, and I've been trying to impose a certain level of discipline on us for many years because I'm worried about this. My mother died at the age of 49 when I was 23. So I know that it can happen. And because my mother died early in life, I've never really lived with the belief that I was going to live forever. I've always lived with the idea that I needed to prepare just because I can't predict. We use a password manager. Now, it happens to be one that I wrote, but that's okay. It's kept up to date. Bonnie has hers, I have mine. We know how to get into each other's password manager files. And my son knows how to do that too. So that's all done. We rewrote our wills for Florida. We came from Washington State, but I'll tell you, they're very different. Washington and Florida have virtually no resemblance to each other. So we rewrote our wills, and our lawyer keeps the signed copies. And we keep paper copies at home, and every one of them has her name emblazoned on it so they know whom to contact. What we did that I think was a little special was we set up in one of our cloud accounts a shared folder. This is just a folder or directory, if you want to call it that, in the cloud. And I put copies of all the wills and end-of-life documents, medical powers, financial powers, last wishes, all that stuff. And we sent out to each of our children, we have 4 children, read-only access. And I wrote a roadmap document that said, here's what's in this document, and here's what this document is, and here's that, and here's the name of our lawyer. Various stuff, not very long, a page or two, that simply was an orientation guide. We call it in the computer business a README file that had all that information, and we sent it out to the kids. Now, all of our children have known for like 5 years now exactly how we're going to split up our estate, mostly where our money is, whom they have to call, what monies they could be expecting in what amount of time if we pass away. And of course, if I pass away first, Bonnie gets everything and vice versa. We have a sweetheart will arrangement. This arrangement pertains only when the last of us dies. But it's important because I believe that if you're in a situation where you don't want your heirs to know who's going to get what, that's a serious problem, and you should probably deal with that right now and fix that to where you can tell everybody up front, here's who gets what, and live by that. That's just my recommendation. Is I would not like to think of my children fighting, saying, Daddy loved you best. No, Daddy loved me best. I don't want to hear that. I wouldn't want to think of that if I were sitting in a hospital fading out. We keep an updated memory stick, which my executor knows where it is. It has copies of the wills. It has copies of our password manager files, okay? And it has a list of personal contacts. We keep all of our computers and stuff backed up. And they're backed up on drives that are not here in the house. So that information is not going to get lost unless someone chooses to throw it away. And mostly we know where and how to use each other's password manager files. Now, I have one more thing to say before we move on to questions and comments. I have been in my life a very anxious man. I have had a lot of fears. I have a very vivid imagination. I'm one of those people, whenever I'm on a train, I can imagine a 50-car train pileup with my body being thrown 200 feet in the air and landing in a big diesel flame. I can think of terrible things that would happen to me and virtually everyone else. And what I find is reassuring to me, that allows me to sleep at night, is the idea that I have taken care of all that I can take care of. I cannot predict that I won't die of COVID. I cannot predict that I won't have a bicycling accident and turn into a vegetable. What I can predict is that when that happens, my wife knows what to do, that she knows all the players, she knows our investment advisors, she knows our doctors, she knows where everything is buried, everything is stored, and that's not something I'm going to have to worry about if I'm fading. I won't have to sweat that. And I think a lot of people in life, and you all are all healthcare professionals, recognize the pernicious nature, the almost toxic nature of relentless anxiety. This is something you can help people by alleviating their anxiety, saying, if you do these things, this is one big aspect of your life that you really will have controlled and you won't have to worry about. And I think that'll help everybody sleep. So please visit the website, download the workbooks, fill them out, and thank you for your attention.